Hello, everybody. So we got great news on HIMS. HIMS stock is up 7% today on the launch of testosterone treatment, testosterone replacement therapy, TRT, a high demand product. If you live in America, you may know how high demand this is. This is a trendy area. Like I always say, low T street malls, in strip malls, you find those mom and pop stores, in quite a bit of places in America. It's a big deal. It's a big launch. And of course, there's a few random players that have launched testosterone, but HIMS, in terms of telehealth, is half the market, right? It's half of all of these apps is HIMS. And so HIMS, compared to some companies like LifeMD, it may be a little late, but given their size and the demand, remember, they have more than 2 million customers. There could be so much cross-selling. I would argue that this launch is timely, if not early, and I'm very, very pleased to see them do that. HIMS treats testosterone now, but it's tough for them to do that because they needed to do labs, right? You needed to have labs, and HIMS didn't have a partnership with like a lab corp, like many of these telehealth companies had partnership with a lab corp, for example, where you would have to go in for your labs, but they want to do it entirely remote. So this launch of testosterone also comes with the launch of the lab testing, and so it's kind of a dual launch, very much a big deal. You can see the marketing, of course, different color for this part of the business. The marketing is second to none, as always when it comes to HIMS. This is health repackaged as a consumer products company and a consumer company. So let's look at the announcement. So the announcement, of course, it's about testing testosterone. Usually people who treat that are urologists, right? That's this type of doctor that does that. As always with HIMS, it's going after, at least in the history of HIMS, we've gone after issues that are not often treated, not widely treated because of stigma. And of course, going to see a doctor for testosterone therapy creates some stigma in person that you would not have if you're just dealing with someone online who's on the other side of the country and just treating you and receiving the medication through the mail. A lot of the treatments that HIMS offer, you have zero stigma because it is a long distance platform. It's discreet shipping, all of that sort of stuff. And so, interestingly, they are launching two things. Coming in 26, they will be launching a branded version. So they partner with a branded drug called Kisastrex. And so they made a partnership with a branded version. That's very interesting. The last time they did a branded thing, of course, was with Novo Nordisk, and they had to end it. I don't anticipate that for that type of treatment. I think this will be successful. But more importantly, starting today, so this Wednesday, providers can now prescribe compounded enclomiphene. And this is where I think we're going to have a lot of cross-selling there, because they can prescribe it in different dosages, and they can also prescribe it along with tadalafil. So this is, again, the personalization of medicine, is you could have a single pill that treats both ED and testosterone in a single pill. This increases efficacy. This increases treatment adherence, because now people don't feel as sick because they only have to take one pill. They don't feel like they have to take so many pills that they forget, right? Oftentimes when treatments don't work is because people forget, and that's kind of like the underlying strategy of HIMS is to kind of like create one person, one pill with every single thing they need in that one pill, and I wouldn't be surprised if you could compound even more stuff in that one pill and just have one person, one pill that treats all of your minor ailments. That's the long-term vision of HIMS, at least in my view. And so it boosts testosterone. All of your products are aiming to boost testosterone by up to 100%, so a doubling from a low level. And this is only made possible, of course, because of at-home blood tests. Because in urology practice, you need to do blood tests before you start somebody. In testosterone, you need to test for prostate cancer, for example. There's other things you need to test for. And this is why this was a more complicated launch than other launches, because they also needed to launch a lab platform in order to do this. And so this is quite interesting. The cost. Let's talk about the cost. Of course, we know HIMS likes to sell long-term plans. So typically they price the monthly plan at a price that they really don't want to sell. It's $199 a month. This is just for people who want to try it out. But my experience with HIMS is that most people end up with a long-term commitment plan. And in a long-term commitment plan, they're coming at under $100, at $99 for HRT. This is very, very cheap because it includes the labs and because it includes the doctor's visits. That's why it is so cheap. In fact, if you look at medical news today, they tell you the cost of TRT is between $1,600 and $3,200, depending on a person's insurance coverage. So even if you have like super, super good insurance coverage, it's still going to be more expensive than going with HIMS. And this is the whole thesis, of course, of HIMS, is to be cheaper than copays, cheaper than insurance. This is what I've always said about this company. If you remove all of the bloat that insurance company, medical offices, pharmacy companies, all these legacy companies have so much bloat. If you remove all of that bloat, you can provide the same service for probably the price of the copay that you would pay elsewhere. And this is very, very much in line. And not to mention, what if the $99 at HIMS also include ED treatment? Think about that. What if it also include heart health? We know they have an ED and heart health bill. What if HIMS has a customized bill for you for $99 that treats like 4 things? I mean, this is disruption at scale. This is pretty crazy disruption. And of course, you don't have to do a doctor visit. The doctor visit is bundled in the price of the drug. That's the beautiful thing of HIMS. So lab testing, really quickly. Why do we do lab testing? Well, there's a liability reason, right? The provider, because remember, it's humans behind that who provide these drugs. They need to see the tests to make sure that they didn't prescribe testosterone to someone who doesn't need it. Right, and sure enough, there's people who try to get it when they don't need it, and so it can be problematic, right? It can cause cancer and all that sort of stuff if you get it when you don't need it, and so predicting liability is very important with these tests, and they need to have baselines to monitor. So they need to monitor over time if the treatment is working or not, and they need to screen for safety, and that's where, for example, ruling out prostate cancer is important before you start someone on TRT. And from conversation with an AI. Sometimes actually urologists want to see 2 different tests to actually confirm that you really have low testosterone. So there's a liability thing, and HIMS is dealing with that liability thing. You can't get started on that before you actually do the tests, before you actually do those lab tests to confirm your eligibility. So this is a dual launch, and this is a launch of a lab testing platform. And that lab testing platform for now is launched only, per what I see, it's launched only for testosterone as of today. So we're only doing it for testosterone. But if you go on comprehensive lab testing, if you type that on Google, comprehensive lab testing HIMS, you'll find that they can do so many different labs. So HIMS could be a disruptor of lab testing companies too. Could be disrupting pharmacies, lab testing companies, and mom and pop doctors. All in one. So this is why a lot of people compare to this company to Amazon, for example. That's why they compare it to that, because they're just very much far ahead. I mean, and it's half of the market, and it's a marketing machine, and it's a customer satisfaction machine, right? If you go on the Apple Store, their customer satisfaction is usually, I think it's like 4.7 out of 5, and they have thousands and thousands of reviews or something like that. So it's super high. So anyways, let's talk about the launch. Let's talk about the main catalyst from this launch. First of all, big catalyst for me is there's an enormous cross-selling possibility with their ED customers. And remember, their oldest cohort, and we don't really have the numbers, but I assume their biggest cohort, I would have to assume that based on all the calls that I've heard from them, is ED. They got started with ED. So that's why the company is called HIMS, because they got started with ED. So imagine all of the cross-selling, right? Imagine the bundles. You send an email, you do a bundle, you send an email to, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of customers. You could send them an email and, get tested out, find out if you have a testosterone issue, and you send an educative email and people test, and then maybe they have an issue. If they have an issue, maybe they want to get treated. If they don't have issue, if the lab testing comes out they don't have an issue, then they don't get treated. And so maybe there's a little customer acquisition cost on this on HIMS. They have to, figure out how they're going to do that, and they're going to absorb that cost because of the lab testing. But it's still an enormous cross-selling possibility. And the capability of HIMSS is great, really, with the lab testing now. Now they can do so much more with the lab testing. There will be other conditions that need lab testing, what I call the medium health condition. They will be able to do that. I think they could get into things like, for example, cancer screening. There's so many things you can screen with cancer with just a blood test. So they could get into those, right? And TRT already screens you. A TRT eligibility test already screens you for prostate cancer. So there's other types of cancer screenings that they could do, comprehensive cancer screening. They could do something like that. And again, we don't have to deal with reimbursement issues. That's the problem with all of these tests, right? People sometimes want to get tested for a bunch of stuff, but the doctor won't even think to recommend the test because it may not be covered by insurance, and they don't have a reason to put in the notes to say it has to be covered by insurance. So you could have a big business like this. You could have people from who like a quantified self movement, who just want to follow themselves, and you could especially do primary care. Typically, the quote-unquote yearly physical, typically it includes lab tests, right? And they track your, I don't know, your A1C, all that sort of stuff. They your cholesterol levels, all of that. You track it typically when you go see your primary care doctor, and then they send you downstairs and you go to the lab and they draw a few samples, and then on the app you get your results. HIMSS could totally do that remotely, and my guess is that they could do it so much cheaper than even the copay for your annual physical, assuming you have one. If you have good insurance, the annual physical is free, and then you don't care. But if you have a copay, they could even do a primary care. So I'm very impressed by that. This continues the disruption of mom and pop doctors, and pharmacies as well, and I think that's the disruption. HIMSS is going after the bread and butter of the medical infrastructure. It's only going after the bread and butter. It's not going after the complicated cases, right? Doctors will always be a thing for more complicated cases, but I don't think HIMSS will go to complicated cases. In fact, HIMSS as a partnership with hospital systems. I can't remember which one, but they have this partnership where if you go see HIMSS and you have a complicated case, they just refer you to an actual hospital or an actual clinic. So that's the disruption of pharmacy chains. Of course, everything needs to be remote. We don't need 45,000 pharmacies, I always say. And the disruption of mom and pop doctor offices. And that disruption, of course, is well in line with the issue of TRT, which is the issue of stigma. So we're going back to the early days of HIMSS. People were not getting treated for ED because of stigma. They don't want to discuss that with a family doctor. Same thing with TRT. People don't want to discuss that with the family doctor, and so they go to other places. And so imagine at pharmacy, you can have the same thing. A stigma picking up a TRT treatment, you bet. Well, you don't have that anymore if you just get it remotely shipped online. Stigma when discussing this with a family doctor, you bet that's the same as ED. Same as ED. You don't have that problem if you do it for HIMSS, if you do it online. So really going back to the roots, going back to HIMSS's roots. And then you have insurance issues. So insurance for minor issues is becoming less and less relevant because of technology. And so if you compare, let's look at TRT. So like I said, it's going to be $99 a month with HIMSS. Compare that to how much it would cost if you go to the traditional route, right? So the traditional route, it would be at least 2 visits. You would need at least 2 visits because you would need to see an internal medicine specialist or a family doctor, or you need to see that person and say, oh, I'm interested in that. And then they would probably like you to likely not only give you a test, like give you a lab test, and they would also send you to the urologist. And the urologist, likely, from what I understand, might want to see you multiple times. And so how much is that going to cost if you go through a traditional process? Well, again, try to go to your local clinic and find out the cost of a doctor visit. It's not that transparent. At the place I go to every year, it's between $189 and $475. It belongs to United Healthcare, by the way. It's like a big clinic from United Healthcare that I go to. $189 to $475, and you typically don't know how much you're getting charged. You know that at the end of a visit, and it depends on what the doctor says in the notes. It's like if you just see the doctor and the doctor want to refer you to a specialist, it's bad luck because you could be on the hook for $400. Now, depending on what you do, insurance, of course, may or may not cover, and it depends on what they do and what you discuss, whether insurance covers or not. But insurances are very, very good at not covering. It's a skill that they have at finding a way to not cover stuff. So you have that pricing uncertainty, which is not a customer-centric practice. Pricing certainty is a customer-centric practice. So you don't know. All you know, getting started on TRT, depending on what they write in their notes, it could be $1,000, right? Or it could be like, I don't know, $80 worth of copays. You don't know you have that uncertainty, and that uncertainty is why a lot of people simply never go to the doctor, because they just don't know. And like I always say, when you go to the traditional route, better be checking your mailbox, right? Better be checking your mail for the next 6 weeks, because you may receive a bill for $12 because the insurance didn't cover that one thing on the bill that was $12. And if you don't catch that bill, you're going to be sent to collection, and your credit score going to go down because you forgot a $12 bill that was sent through the mail in the inbox, like at the curb. Anyways, so some people, it's crazy stuff, but it's so outdated. And so $99 a month on an app, they are going to take over so much, in my view. This is going to be a big takeover. HIMSS bundles the doctor's cost. It bundles the lab costs. It bundles the drug cost into one subscription payment. And so in my view, for this treatment, just like a lot of other treatments, HIMSS will be cheaper than the traditional ways. $99 a month. That's fiber. That's your internet bill, roughly. A little higher. Anyways, this is so cheap, depending on the speed of internet. This is so cheap. It's very, very cheap. It's much cheaper than copays. Much cheaper than copays. And if you look at the CEO, he's mentioned that the average American, just in copays, pays something like more than $2,000 in copays a year for the average American. So you're at about half that. You're about twice as cheap. So that's a 0-to-1 strategy. That's a 0-to-1 strategy where you're attacking the profit centers of healthcare, because make no mistake, traditional healthcare makes a lot of money on these what I call minor or medium issues. That's where they make the bulk of the money. Well, HIMSS is disrupting that, because you can do that with technology, and so to me the thesis is more intact than ever. And this company has been painted as a GLP-1 company, and it's just been so much noise around this company. Anyways, the stock is up 7% right now. It's been a roller coaster, up, down, up, down, up, down. It seems like we're in a sharp up move again. And so, if we reach $80 and then it goes back to 40, don't be surprised. This is what this stock has been. Although it keeps putting higher average stock price over time. If you average out the stock price, if you take the weekly moving averages, the stock is trending up, and it's a beautiful stock to own. And last question, of course, on this channel, I always ask: is it a cheap stock? EV over GP over RG is 0.15. This stock is still super cheap. It's not the cheapest, of course, in my spreadsheet, but when you take into account the quality of this company, which I consider this company to be the highest quality in its sector. In its sector, it's the highest quality. It's a higher quality company than LifeMD. I like LifeMD very much, but it's a higher quality company than LifeMD, and the valuation is dirt cheap. It's a little more expensive in LifeMD, but it's still dirt cheap. I cannot wait for this company to actually. I think this company should trade at a premium valuation, i.e., higher than a 0.5, right? So there's like a 3.5x up in valuation, just in multiple expansion alone, as far as I'm concerned, for this company to just trade at what I find fair value in this spreadsheet, right? And so I think it should be trading at a premium. So to me, this company has enormous upside. I'm definitely not playing around selling calls or anything like that on this company. This is definitely not the stock where you want to do that, in my view. I know a lot of people have a lot of fun with options on this one, but to me, this is a long-term hold. Don't forget volatility. There's a reason why volatility is so high. Volatility is so high because the market expects upward volatility coming up for this stock. That's why volatility is so high. That's why the option space is so good, because you may miss out on your gains if you play a little too hard with options. So anyways, This was not investment advice, not financial advice. This is only entertainment. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.